do we sit down when all should be standing? And why do we back down at the critical moment, like running away from the waves of the ocean?
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio here on KYAH 540 AM. I am Ben McClintock here with Tim McGaffin. Come on up, Tim. Let's get you closer to the mic.
Thanks, Ben.
And with our special guest, Beau Babka. Thanks for joining us, Beau. Probably bring your chair a little bit closer, too. And I can tell that I am probably being too loud. And so let's get down to our business real quick. We want you to, all of our listeners, to go to facebook.com/defendingutah and like us. We'll let you know what's going on. Post new articles that we have on our website. Let you know who our guests are going to be on the show. And just kind of keep you up to date on things going on in Utah. Also, during the show, if you have a comment or a question for Beau or for any of us, please send us a message or make a comment on the Defending Utah Facebook page, and we'll be sure and read that unless it's inappropriate. And also go to our website, defendingutah.org. That's defendingutah.org, where we post all of our original investigations. You don't see that a lot on TV news anymore, of original investigative journalism, where we go through and not just doing Google searches or copying and pasting other people's articles, but we actually go through and we do interviews with folks and let you know what's going on. And I was just told that the music was on that whole time. Good thing we have texting. And so go check out our website, defendingutah.org. Wanted to go over some of the headlines in the news today, and we go over some of the Salt Lake Tribune and KSL and see what's going on in Utah. There was a missing Payson man who was found safe. He was last seen on Friday, and it's a good news. They found him. His name was Dustin Hahn. He was considered missing and endangered after he failed to contact his wife over the weekend, according to Payson police. Hahn sent a text message to his wife Friday and was heard leaving the home Saturday morning at about 6 a.m., police said. Hahn left his 2000 blue Chevy Avalanche pickup truck, which had camping supplies in it, and the police said he used the couple's debit card in Santaquin and Fillmore on Saturday, but didn't use it again and didn't contact anyone. He didn't have his medication with him when he went missing, police said, and police issued an attempt to locate that extended to Arizona and Nevada, and on Wednesday morning, Hahn was located in safe condition, but details were not released about where Hahn had been, so glad to hear he's safe. Let's just get right into today's show. Beau, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, especially since this is like your third day?
Our third day.
So, I mean, to have me on, I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, really.
Thanks, Beau.
So let's give some folks some background. I'm a fairly, relatively recent transplant from Arizona, and so I came in the year that you ran for sheriff.
2010.
And
that was the second time running. Yes.
And so I just remember kind of hearing some of the news, and just, I don't know if I'm just cynical or I just don't like what, the media. I just always like, what, they're probably reporting something the exact opposite is usually what's true. And so I just felt like something fishy was going on there. And I'm just so glad we have this opportunity, 5 years later to get to talk to you and get the real scoop of what really happened. But before we get into that, maybe, I know there's lots, you've got a great history here in Utah with running for Congress and being a police officer. And sometimes especially in the news recently, there's, a lot of things that people might be critical of police for, especially, you got national news, but also right here in Utah with the shooting of the dog, with the shooting of Darien Hunt in Saratoga Springs, that it can, you've got some people that say, no matter what a cop does, it's right, and you've got other people that say no matter what a cop does, it's wrong, right. And so, but usually the truth is maybe somewhere in between. Sometimes it's more leaning one way or the other, but I don't think either way is right. And so when you lean one way or the other, especially, and sometimes, I don't know, maybe you have more info on the Darian Hunt case, but it looks kind of iffy with getting shot in the back several times. Maybe there's more to it than that, but it looks kind of fishy to me. But I don't know.
Yeah, they're obviously deadly force situations are amazingly dynamic, and so for us, it's almost like not watching a football game and being a Monday morning quarterback. And
Right.
then now, as we're getting video cameras and things like that, we're seeing more and more on tape. But it's really what I used to do is either as a teacher or as a trainer or as a police chief or administrator or whatever, was trying to help our citizens, any citizens, understand the dynamics of that. And so one of the tools that we used to use, and I think most police departments still use it, is have people go through their academies, like a mini training academy, to help them understand what the dynamic is, how quickly, if someone is coming at you with a knife or somebody has a knife, how quickly one can be stabbed, a police officer can be stabbed, as opposed to maybe 20 feet away. And 20 feet away, you're still in harm's way before an officer can maybe pull his gun and shoot. So, or, a lot of people will say, well, why don't you wing him in the knee? Why don't you wing him in the shoulder? Why don't you shoot him in the shoulder? Those kinds of things. And I think a lot of things in the media lately have come out and said, the police are trying to explain, look, we train to stop. And that's something that's important for citizens to understand, is that, and also, it's not to kill, it's to stop the threat. And so you shoot, as an officer, you shoot to center of mass, and then other places after that. But we also teach our people self-defense, or somebody going to get a gun permit or whatever it is, and they go out and shoot. We teach them the same, we teach them the same kind of thing. So what I'm trying to get at is, yes, it's a dynamic situation. There's a lot of people right now, because of so many shootings, because of the racial hint on everything. And there's some people that just don't like cops, will never like cops. And then there's some people that, love cops, and whatever they do, is wonderful. But there always needs to be a check and balance. And I think that's the relationship with the community is probably the most important thing. And that was something that I advocated throughout my career. And that's helping the citizenry understand that what police work is. It is, in a free society, in our free society, it is the most dynamic job that you could ever have, because you have the ability to take away somebody's rights. You have the ability to take away someone's freedom to move about. You have the ability to use deadly force and stop them, and sometimes take their life. What other profession do you have? So that's why it's obviously now it's so amazingly, it's blown out of proportion both ways. Do I think that police officers maybe make a poor judgment sometimes? Sure they do. But the majority of the time they make amazing decisions in split-second time. I've been in several real deadly force situations, and in each one of those situations, there was no time for me to think. It was more reaction than anything else. So
just muscle memory because of all the training.
Well, in one situation for me, it was a knife fight, and I had never trained knives. I was an athlete. I was a football player. I got into police work, a few years after that, but I never, in the academy, you learn how to do arrest control and you do all those kinds of things, but we never went into knife fighting, so it was just luck. For me, it was, turning a knife around on somebody else. So there's a lot of things that, like I said, I use the word dynamic and fluid, but that's why there needs to be review. That's why cameras are great. I think that's going to be body cams. The thing 20 years ago was the dash cam. That was something that, and we've progressed from that, and now I think body cams will be a great tool to help everyone understand. Community members, elected officials, the police. It'll help with training. It'll help with educating the public. So I give no excuses to anybody. There is an issue. There's obviously an issue right now, but I think it's good. I think this discussion and everything that's going on is very good. The loss of life is not good for a police officer or somebody else.
Right.
But I think it's important to understand I think it's important for everyone to understand that those situations are those are critical incidents. And, it's almost, you can't equate it to war and a soldier, but in a way you almost can, because you want to go home. We teach our police officers to go. We want them to go home, not at any cost, but we want them to go home. And when you're faced with deadly situations like up in Salt Lake City, you see the big shovel. Well, a shovel can get good hit with a shovel. The officer's down. They take the gun out of his hand. You shoot the officer. So, anyway.
Well, I think all those situations, especially at least in Utah, it shows that it's not really racial. I think that's kind of blown out of proportion, because out of 6 or 7 in the last year, officer-involved shootings, only one of them was with a minority.
Correct. Yeah. I think that what we see is that's good, because it shows that around the country, and I don't want to get into the race thing at all, really, but there are more white, Caucasian people killed by police. Now, some of those are black officers that kill, or Hispanic officers that kill those. But I think sometimes it can be blown out of proportion.
It shows that it's situation-based, not race-based.
Exactly. The Ferguson thing, that was the thing that really has started everything. And there you have, sorry, but you got a thug. You got an 18-year-old thug, I think he was, and he was doing things all day long, trying to take an officer's gun. Well, you tell me the appropriate steps when a bigger man than the officer is trying to take a gun from someone. There's no other choice other than to use deadly force.
Right, and that's one of the circumstances where you see there was a grand jury versus like an internal investigation. Internal investigations, those can look fishy, because you're like, like if I get pulled over and I just tell the officer, I'll have my wife investigate that for you and get back to you. That's, I don't think, that's
right.
not going to go over too well.
Right.
But if you have just citizens that are part of the jury doing something, I think that's kind of less biased.
I think you'll also see, the legislature today or yesterday talked about having a task force reviewing, police procedure statewide and training purposes and things like that. I think you'll probably see, again, review committees, citizen review committees. 20 years ago, we had them. They would review some policy and procedure and some police situations that weren't, they're already adjudicated or already taken care of. But, that's why you have an internal investigation. That's why you have an investigation by the district attorney. So it takes that out of it. And then you also, in some cases, you have an investigation by another police agency. I think you'll probably see not only the DA, their own, I know your same agency and another agency, I think you'll see a state group that will probably be formed to look at every shooting, every deadly force situation. Remember, deadly force doesn't have to be just with a gun.
As a state,
one of mine.
The state group, would that be separate from the citizen review?
I think it would probably be made up of legislators or citizens or things like that. I think you're probably going to see something like that, because it'll probably delve into other things like corruption or whatever else. But that's just my feeling. I think we'll probably go to the extreme here in the next few years. We'll probably have more boards and more commissions than probably is needed, but then again, it is an issue and probably needs to be looked at, or definitely needs to be looked at.
So with the cameras, I've had some concerns with the cameras, but you said you were in favor of them, of Fourth Amendment issues, as well as in sensitive situations. If somebody's if that encounter is on film, does that make them guilty before proven innocent? And or with maybe with sensitive situations like spousal abuse, with minors and that kind of thing, to make sure that people are protected. I mean, we want the police to be protected, of course, but protecting those sensitive circumstances. What do you think about?
Well, I think you'll see. Right now, if someone's to serve a search warrant in someone's home, talking Fourth Amendment issues, they have to have a warrant. They have to make sure they have a warrant. I think you'll see that continue. I mean, you have a video camera.
Right. But I mean, like when they pull you over, that kind of circumstance.
We already have dash cams.
Mm-hmm.
That's, obviously that's, and I think, and anything that's videoed is obviously going to have to go through the scrutiny of the Fourth Amendment and the court process
before it's released.
Exactly. You're not going to see
live streaming.
No. If you do, I think that would be, yes, I fully agree that's a violation. But until that's adjudicated, or until that district attorney or entity believes that, it'll fall in line with GRAMA, our Government Records Acts. There'll be legislation, I'm sure, that will govern how these police videos will be disseminated. And if they end up on YouTube and they end up on, somebody's Facebook site before that time, then why they should be. Or
like they do with city council meetings, they're broadcast live. You wouldn't have each officer's body cam broadcasting live 24/7.
No, and if that was the case, that'd be horrible. The reality is it's very difficult to really watch every officer's, shift. You know what I mean? You have a department of 100 officers, and maybe 50 of them are in patrol. For someone, you'd have to have a whole corps. You have to have 50 other people to watch all that. So you've got to know, and the citizens have to know, that only pertinent video is going to be pulled from that stuff.
Right.
You really can't have somebody just looking at that and pulling it off as they want and throwing it on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. And I don't mean to minimize the whole Fourth Amendment issue, but there are, obviously someone should be, dealt with if they're going to live stream, patrol car video and things like that. I don't think that...
You don't think police departments would be doing that, or the state or the county?
I don't think they're going to do that, because remember that that's evidence. Remember that that's evidence, and any time evidence, if you have a case involving some type of criminality, you're going to have to go through the proper process to release that information. That's going to have to, if it's a court case, it has to go through the court process. The screening process, the filing process, the charge process, the court process, the adjudication process, before anybody's going to try or should allow to see that video.
So we're on with Beau Babka. I'm Ben McClintock with Tim McGaffin on Defending Utah Radio, talking about, right now we're talking about the police cameras, or the personal cameras that they might have on them. Do you know where maybe some of the videos would be saved? Would they be on SD cards on the camera? Would they be streamed to the police department and saved on a hard drive there?
They're going to be.
Is it different for each one?
As much as I know, what we used to do with dash cams, that's the way, in early police cameras, on police, yes. They'll drive up to, most of them will drive up to the police station, and that'll stream in, or they'll dock.
Gotcha.
And that'll be pulled off. And that'll be done by an evidence technician, a person that's certified to do that by the court, by court process, So
if an officer didn't want to get in trouble for something he was doing, go in there and just delete the whole thing?
Yeah, that would be really difficult. My experience with, dash cams and things like that, it is, they're maybe your technical officer that oversees all that, or your IT
if they're buddies and they're like, my buddy's going to get in trouble, I
could see that happen, and I've seen that happen before. But the officer is typically not the one. It's higher up, or it's...
You'd have to have a buddy.
Yeah, you'd have to have a buddy as the IT person or the evidence person, or you'd have to have an administrator, a police administrator, that would all of a sudden, it would disappear. Something would disappear.
There's a malfunction.
Exactly. And obviously that could be an excuse,
Yeah.
That could be an excuse. That's excuses I used to get with some officer. Well, I forgot to turn my camera on, or I didn't do whatever. But the problem is most of that goes into a storing type of a database in the back of a car, in the dash cams. That's the way they were. So
Interesting. Well, I really want to get into your background, kind of how you got into maybe the public eye, running for Congress. Maybe if there's some stuff before that might be relevant. Let's tell us about that, Beau.
Well, the long or the short version. I was born and raised. I was born and raised in California.
What part?
Southern,
Okay.
Manhattan Beach, and northern. Went to high school in Stockton, California, kind of the melting pot in California.
I grew up in Davis.
Nice. Went to Amos Alonzo Stagg of football. I was football all the way through. Went to college in Hawaii. Went to college in Arizona. Got drafted by Seattle. Played in Seattle. Was a restaurateur for a while in my early 20s, and then decided to marry my ex-wife, and we ended up moving back down to Orange County. Basically the economy in the early 90 bottomed out, and she was LDS, and so she had sisters in Orem and Provo, and so we moved up here. I had started the LAPD Academy at the time, so I had started a little bit of that. So I was a business major at the time. I'm, way back, I had a few degrees in college, and so I was one of those kind of, I wanted to be in business, and all of that was my total focus. But anyway, we moved up into Orem, kind of just off 8th North, in some chicken coops. They were renovated chicken coops, $250 a month, and we had a dog because nobody would take the dog. Anyway,
Hopefully the zoning guy didn't come get you.
No.
The dog was already there.
Yeah, worked little odd jobs, but really wanted to be an officer. So I went to post, and immediately. Took off, got a job in South Salt Lake, started in South Salt Lake as patrolman.
And why did you want to be an officer?
At first it was, I needed a steady job. I needed a steady job, and I needed something with benefits, and I never thought that I wanted to be a police officer. But that was the time when Cops came out, the show Cops came out. So that's why I enrolled in the LAPD Academy, and I thought, I'm gonna do this. But I've always been a protector.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a real horrible, like a lot of people, a horrible home of abuse and things like that. And so I protected my mom.
Mm-hmm.
I protected my brothers who were younger, so I became dad at like age 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of those protectors, and it was as soon as I got into the world of, I call it policing, but law enforcement, it was just for me because I could help people. I could see, well, in some cases I could see from point A to point B, and they're better off now. I'm leaving them better off than they were. So I got involved initially because of the stable job,
right.
The government job kind of thing. But it became more than that. It became a calling. It became something that I really loved. I really loved to help people. Didn't like the violence, didn't like the gore and the horror and the realities of life. Didn't enjoy using deadly force on people. Didn't enjoy any of that stuff, but enjoyed the proactivity of policing. So anyway, the protecting. I was a protector. I still am. I think that's probably evident. I still love to protect and motivate.
That's the proper
people.
role of government: protect our rights.
Yeah, and I think the most important, I moved up the ranks fairly quickly because of my education, and I think probably because I was very proactive and probably dynamic, and that's where I started to gain enemies, and that's where I started to gain a lot of good people that really have followed me.
Enemies among the force or with the public, or
with the force in politics. I was the golden boy. I was the golden boy of law enforcement in South Salt Lake. I became very visible in 1992 when Chief Bob Gray was the chief in South Salt Lake, and he put me in as a public information officer. And that was a job that I carried all the way through in any position that I had in law enforcement. Was something that I related to the media. That was something that my goal was always to show the media. We're talking about what's going on right now in law enforcement and the perceptions. My goal was always to make them understand what we did. So, if we made a mistake, we'll tell you. We'll be upfront with you. But if someone else made a mistake, we will tell you. So it was very important to me to be integral and to show our community. And by doing that, I showed kind of the state as to what what law enforcement was and how it was. And teaching was I was a teacher at the colleges for almost 20 years as well. So that was a great dynamic for me. I could teach, but I could also preach, and I could also do that in the media. So that's where the recognition came in. In 2000, in the year 2000, I was the assistant chief in South Salt Lake. I'd moved up really quick. About 6.5 years, 7 years, I was the assistant chief there. I went to the FBI National Academy, which is a Finnish school for police administrators. And there I had it wasn't a vision, but I'd been knocking heads with Aaron Kennard, who was the sheriff of Salt Lake County back then. And I thought I knew everything. And I was a young whippersnapper, and I decided there in 2002 I was going to run for sheriff. So that became my first political delve into what was going on. So from there I became the chief in South Salt Lake, and then I went to be the undersheriff in Salt Lake County, and then I went to Cottonwood Heights as kind of a waiting period and a time, to help them. They were starting a police department, so my assets were being used to help promote this. They really had a good thing going on there, and showing the people, that new police departments can be built and shown. And then I ran for sheriff a second time. So I ran for sheriff in 2002, I ran for Congress in 2004, and then I ran for sheriff again in 2010. Against my friend Jim Winder at the time. Jim was a friend before that, but against Jim, and so that's kind of the visibility came from teaching and doing a lot of radio, doing a lot of TV, and honestly, people, there's haters out there that think it was all about me. It's never been about me. It really hasn't. It's been about people. It's been about communities. It's been about showing my greatest, I think my greatest, how would you say it, achievement was in South Salt Lake in 2000, when we had been working, the style of policing was community policing, and we took the crime rate from 325 crimes per 1,000. We were the highest crime rate in Utah and any region. And
was that in South Salt Lake?
South Salt Lake. And in 1999, 2000, we brought it down to about 110. And
in
that's
a 1 year
major.
time span?
No, 4 year.
Oh, 4 year time span.
Yeah.
Okay.
So crimes per, and that wasn't just me. That was the community. That was the politicians. That was other agencies. That
people working
out.
together.
Yeah, working together. And so when I say achievement, people don't see that. That is probably the biggest policing achievement that I could have ever had and did. But then again, I created there were a lot of haters out there. I was the.
If you're out front, you're going to make enemies and friends.
I was but I got things done. So that pretty much, that's why the visibility. That's why, doing the weekly radio show with, Frankie and DB up at 97.1 for 10 years. Did that for 10 years. It was not only Ask Beau, but it was, about the criminal justice system. I had prosecutors on, I had cops on, I had social workers on, I had, you name it. I had AP&P agent. I had everybody in that ever has to do with anything in the criminal justice system, because it really is an interesting thing, and most people don't know about it. Yeah. So anyway, long story.
So we're going to get even deeper into it, because that's kind of a brief overview, actually. But so just remind everybody, if you just joined us, I'm Ben McClintock with Defending Utah Radio, with my host, Tim McGaffin.
Thanks, Ben. Glad to be here.
And with our special guest, Beau Babka. And we're just talking about, gave a brief overview of where you came from, Beau, and kind of how, and then not even to where you are today, but just your involvement in police work, right, and how you got to Utah police work. And I want to make a few just brief announcements. If you're in the market for a new house or for selling your house, I recommend you call Bob Womack at 801-372-7094. That's Bob Womack at Osmond Real Estate, 801-372-7094. Also, American Appliance is in the market for an HVAC tech in Utah County. And so if you've got 2 years experience in repair, diagnostic, and working on repair of HVAC systems. They also have a clean background and a clean driving record. That's a great company to work for. They have consistent weekly overtime pay, fun work environment, diversified work, and the pay is $18 to $25 an hour depending on experience. So if that's something that fits your experience, AmericanApplianceHVAC.com or 801-254-2566. It's 801-254-2566, and be sure to tell them that you heard about the position from Defending Utah Radio. So, Beau, one of the things that stuck out to me, I know I'm going to go all over the place. This is not going to be very chronological.
I'm all over the place, so don't worry about it.
Hopefully we can go back and get everything that I remember and that I wanted to talk about. But you said that you were friends with Sheriff Winder. Mm-hmm. I'm not personally a big fan of his, just from the things. But do you still consider him friends?
I was a friend. Yeah, back in one of the controversies was that I left the sheriff's office in 2008 after being there about 18 months. The politics and the, sometimes people, I was a doer. Again, I was a chief before Jim was the sheriff. Jim had been a sergeant in the sheriff's office and had won, beat Aaron Kennard, beat the dynasty of Aaron 4 terms. He asked me if I wanted to come over as the undersheriff, kind of the unelected sheriff, and from the very beginning, it was an odd thing. He changed. We talk about how people change when they get elected, or they change when something happens, and he changed.
Jim?
We did not become friends. He brought in Jackie Biskupski, who's going to be running for mayor of Salt Lake County, or Salt Lake, I think. She was another Democrat, a very influential Democrat, and she was a supporter of me early on in the years as well. But obviously, it was time, to promote Jim, and I did. A lot of people thought I took him on TV, I took him on radio, and I think what happened was I think a lot of there was a little bit of jealousy because I knew all the chiefs. I may have been threatening. I think he may have went, wait a minute, what did I do? I've got somebody here who's got the network, but what he didn't realize is I was promoting him and wanted to promote him as much as
you had
possible.
No desire to be in that spot.
At the time, I had no desire to be the sheriff because he called me a year before running for sheriff and said, hey, would you help me? And are you going to run? And I said, no, I'm not going to run, Jim. I'll support you. And it was truthful. Didn't want to become sheriff. I enjoyed being chief in South Salt Lake. I enjoyed that position. So anyway, the dynamics of the relationship changed. Politics came into play. I think, to be honest with you, the Democratic Party got upset at me for, one reason or another. Leaving, yeah. I think they probably got upset at that. And so that relationship went south really fast. And then I had an opportunity.
Before you even ran?
Oh, before I even ran in 10. Yes, this was in 07. This was in 06, 07. So I had gone from chief in South Salt Lake over as his undersheriff at Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. Mm-hmm. In 08, I had an opportunity. I had some headhunters from California asked me to apply for the Orange County Sheriff's position when, I can't even remember his name now, but they were indicting the sheriff, the undersheriff, all that.
Oh, wow.
That was in
long story. 2008. And so long story short, I ended up the only candidate out of 300 and some odd candidates. These big-time Department of Defense folks, these Homeland Security folks, chiefs in California. There were 8 finalists for the job. I was the only one from outside California and the only one from outside Orange County. So long story again short, I went to Jim and I said, hey, I just want you to know that I'm in the finals for this job. And he had a huge problem with that. He thought it was a threat to him. Instead of being a manager and a leader, hey, wow, here's one of my guys, boom, one of the biggest sheriff's offices in the country being considered for that position. So I think that put the nail in the coffin.
He had to have maybe somebody of the same party to do it, or...
Well, no, I think he thought as a threat. Why is this guy,
trying to work his way up?
Yeah. He wants to be sheriff. He wants to, no. That way, things were going south, and I knew it was time to part ways. The other statement that was made to me, and I think it was put in the City Weekly when I did I had one of his aides come to me and said, "We can't have somebody that's more popular than the sheriff." And I just looked at him and I went, What does that mean?
Yeah,
I mean, really, what does that mean? Anyway, so our relationship went south, and I ended up going on to Cottonwood Heights, and that's where, I don't even remember your question, but
being friends with Jim.
I'm yakking. Yeah, I was friends and helped him, and
then that went south before you. It wasn't because you were running for office.
No. In fact, I was contemplating running for different offices than sheriff at the time.
So
why, I don't know.
Before we get into my next question, we have Greg Lesher, a listener. He asked the question, what can be done to stop children playing with toy guns from being shot by police? And I would take a bullet from a child first before I return fire, just to be sure. So that's what his comment was.
Well, I think it's obviously a great question. And that, what we always taught in law enforcement was make sure those guns are different colors.
The toy manufacturers, but the little
manufacturers with whatever
orange
on it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, little kids are a little bit different than teenagers that are driving in cars. And I don't mean to, embellish on the question.
Right.
But the question, training. Officers, the more training they have, the more recognition they have, the more education that the community has or kids have. I'm not saying that kids can't have toy guns or play guns or whatever. I mean, I grew up, and I hope everybody grows up with, that kind of thing. But I think it's on both sides. It's understandable that who kills officers? Well, teenagers with guns and all kinds of people and knives. But I think it's education on both. It's training on one, education on the other. Gun manufacturers, I'm not sure.
You mean toy gun
manufacturers? I'm not sure. I don't know what else you can do other than.
I think the law is already. They got to have at least the orange cap or different.
Yeah, orange caps, and if I were a parent, I'd maybe even deck it out even more. But it shouldn't happen. In my career, I never had a situation
like
where a young kid was killed by a police officer because of a toy gun. I saw situations where it was it may have been like a BB gun that looked,
because BB guns look pretty real,
or an airsoft gun,
right?
That looked. I mean, and they pointed at the officer, and that was the situation. So
it can be tough.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard call. But I guess the best thing to do is knee on it and do whatever you need to do to it.
If you're a parent,
color it up. Yeah.
So I wanted to get back to kind of when you got into running for different offices. You were in Utah County and you ran for Congress as a Democrat, and in Utah County that can be, that's not exactly the most popular party in Utah County.
Oh yeah, is there a Democratic Party? There it is. There's some great people. Don't kill me.
And so tell us about what made you want to run. What were you doing at that time for work? Were you in law enforcement at the time? And what got you to want to run for Congress as a Democrat in that district against Chris Cannon?
In 2002, I ran for sheriff as a Democrat.
Against who? Was that in Utah County?
No. In Salt Lake County, against Aaron Kennard, and I got 48% of the votes. I almost beat Aaron.
And you were a Democrat, and he was a
Republican.
And the Republicans were winning up in Salt Lake at that time.
They were. I was the assistant chief in South Salt Lake at the time. I was teaching at the colleges, doing my thing. I had the political bug in a way. The party approached me with this amazing, I thought at the time. And I had aspirations. I don't anymore. I didn't, after 3 losing elections. The Lord was trying to tell me something. But the process, I loved the campaign process, meeting people, solving problems. That's what I was. A protector, a problem solver, that's what I was. So what drew me to that was a ticket with Matheson, the two Mathesons. Matheson, Scott was running for governor. Jim was running again for his district that they, switched off. And then there was some great candidates in Salt Lake County that were running, and nobody really worked at. There were some Democratic congressmen in Chris's, area before Chris, but nobody really worked an election. And I was a hard worker, and so it was a combination. It was kind of a perfect storm, and obviously needing a lot of help, because I thought, oh my gosh, here's this regular guy, this cop running for Congress. That's kind of a teacher. That's kind of a weird thing, but I loved it. So it was the west side of Salt Lake County, all down to Utah County, all of Utah County, and then down to Delta and some places out Ephraim. That was some of the areas. It was a huge area, actually.
Right.
And campaigning was awesome. I mean, it was the greatest experience. I mean, I learned about water rights. I learned about everything from Native American Indian tribes and their land to
while you're campaigning,
water.
These issues are brought up that
just amazing stuff
that you're not quite familiar with, and so you're able to learn more about that during the campaign process. And
exactly, and it was one of those things where I really, really enjoyed it. I knew that a congressman can only do so much, legislate, but I also learned that people think that people in Congress they can change the world. They kind of think of them as rock stars, but if you really look at it, they really can't do a whole lot, And
one of 435 other guys.
Yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing. Unless you have a lot of tenure there, and you get a lot of power, that kind of stuff. But what really drew me to that was the campaigning, going out and meeting people, knocking on doors, going to events, going to rallies, listening to them, going, oh wow, maybe we can fix that. Maybe we can do that. But it was probably the best learning experience that I think I've ever had in government, and understanding the legislative process and understanding something outside of my criminal justice world. I was learning more about big government, learning about money, a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I was learning about why people give money to people. They give people money because they think they can win,
right?
And they didn't give me much money because they didn't think I could win. Which and I thought, well, I'm going to win this thing. I think I did it with $20,000, and Chris spent like $500,000.
Wow!
It was just amazing, and I got that many votes.
Does that show that he was scared? Because I don't think Jason Chafe had spent $10.
No, yeah.
This last time, at least.
Yeah, and Jason, really attacked at the low level. I mean, he does a good job. He did a great job the first time. But yes, it was one of those experiences that I think I had a lot of people looking at me going, "What the heck are you doing? Why do you continue to?" There were a lot of people that would go, "Why are you doing that? You don't even." Well, why not? Why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I want to? It's even more protecting. It's even more, it's even more problem solving. It's all that kind of stuff. And so, and I was an overachiever at the time. One of those guys that I wanted to help more and more people. So I did it, and it was a great experience. And I don't regret it. Do I regret running 3 times and losing 3 times? And like I said, I think I don't, like I said in the article, like I've said in many articles, I wasn't electable. I don't think people saw me as a politician, which I guess is a good thing. Really, I guess it's
people
a good
did
thing.
not see you as a politician.
Yeah, they
exactly.
didn't see me as a guy that could do that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. Now I am, obviously.
Right.
You gave a good example of how your opponent had maybe $500,000 in campaign funds, and you had maybe $20,000, and you had 48% of the vote. About that,
yeah, 38% with Chris.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That says a lot.
Yeah. When it was done,
dollar for dollar for vote.
Yeah.
when it was done, I was like, wow, somebody really has a chance here. Because if I can't do it, and I only did it with $20,000, and it goes back to that old thing about, remember a long time ago that it was a regular man's Congress, a regular woman's Congress? I mean, that's the problem with things right now. You have to have bazillion dollars to get elected.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying before. We were talking about the toy gun issue is education. The people need to become aware what the principles are, and vice versa. And the more that happens, and that's the main difference. If people are not understanding what's going on, then
they can see through those that are politicians.
Yeah,
yeah, and some of my haters think I was a pure politician, but I don't view myself as that. And the people that supported me, I spent many a night, sleeping in my car and truck on the campaign trail, just to learn of what people's issues were. I mean, okay, you call me a politician, but no, I was doing my homework. Trying to figure out what their needs were, and it was wherever I went, it was totally different. So, one of the greatest experiences of my life was running for Congress.
Delta had different needs than Provo.
Amen. Yeah, you got the ranchers, you got the, land use stuff, you got the BLM, you got federal lands versus state lands, you got all these issues that there's some things that people don't talk about, but then, there are things that are hot on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it changes. Like I said, when I was running for Congress, that was the year that we started talking about civil unions. We weren't talking about gay marriage. We were talking about civil unions. Can we find a way to, because I was working with people that have partners that long-time partners. Are they going to, what's going to happen when they die? What's going to happen? What's the deal?
Contractual and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So, speaking of maybe a politician, people may be thinking of you as a politician or switching from a Democrat to a Republican. It seems like when you have, like with Orrin Hatch and Jason Chaffetz, both grew up as Democrats. And then they moved to Utah. And you move to Utah and you say, how do I want to, if I want to get elected, what do I got to do? Do I run as a Democrat, especially in Utah County, or do I run as a Republican? And I tend to suspect that most of the Democrats that plan on getting elected actually do switch to be Republican if you're in Utah County, because if they want to get elected, that's what you do.
Right.
And so do you think maybe people saw you as that, running for Democrat, as a Democrat twice, and then all of a sudden you run as Republican for sheriff? Do you think maybe people said, he's just doing that so he can get elected?
Sure. I think so. I mean, to be honest, yeah. I mean, there were people that, people will look at me and go, well, you're a Democrat, I'm not voting for you in the congressional race, But the minute I'm a Republican, they'll vote for me.
Right.
And then the Democrats, some Democrats would go, oh man, he switched parties, he's gone,
Mm-hmm.
Instead of looking at the person,
yeah,
right.
looking at the person and looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm a situational guy. I really am. I mean, I have some strong feelings. That's why the party system is what it is. But I have some real feelings about a lot of different things, and they're conservative, and sometimes they can be viewed as liberal, but that's me. And that's probably another reason why I wasn't a good politician and why I didn't get elected. Because I couldn't fit into that. You got to fit here to get elected. Okay. You got to fit here to get elected.
And that's the thing. Me and Ben and the show that we're doing here, defendutah.org, is one of our things is principle over party, principle over personality, looking at the issues.
And the motto is think right and wrong, not left and right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so someone that's doing that is trying to look at each individual issue and see what's right and wrong according to that issue, rather than making a decision based on an affiliation or a party.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the difference between a politician and someone who's trying to be more of a statesman.
I drove my handlers nuts in every campaign. I drove them nuts because I didn't. I wasn't always the. Excuse me, the party, towing this party and towing that.
To get along type of guy.
Yeah, it may have looked like that to some, but no, I was always.
So what got you to switch then? What was there a point where you're like, you know what, I just can't be a Democrat anymore? What was there something that like said, you know what, that's just too far, or was there just like, you know what, I just feel more comfortable? It was nothing big. Was it?
It was during that 2004 campaign for Congress. There was some real ideological things and personal things, moral things that really the National Party was going in a direction. The Democratic National Party was going in a direction that I thought, was just too far for me. After going through that election, it taught me a lot about parties as well, especially the congressional one, and I really started to identify more with a few more of the Republican Party platform items, and whether it's courage or stupidity or whatever else, I decided, you know what, I can't fly that flag. I can't fly that D party flag anymore. I just can't do it. I can't do it. And some people will say, well, you did it because you wanted to. That was 3 years before. Almost 4 years before.
Running for office.
Before running in 2010. I switched. So it's not something that happened.
So was that in the back of your head, like maybe I'm going to run, I better switch parties now? Was it just like, I just need to be a different party?
No, I was done. You're done with children. My ex-wife, we were done with 2 kids, then we were done with 4, and we were definitely done with 6. After that 2004 election, you guys probably know, when you work hard on an election, it nearly kills you. And even if you're in great shape.
Yeah, if you're sleeping in a car on some of those...
beat the snot out of you.
You're working you're working all night long, you're trying to get your white papers going, you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that. Non-stop. And so one of the things that was interesting for me was that 2004 campaign killed me, because I really didn't get the support from the party that I thought I was going to get. And that really upset me. And I could see why they wanted Jim to get elected again. I could see why they wanted to get Scott Matheson as the governor. I could see why, some of these other guys were going to take the spotlight or whatever. It doesn't mean they treated me bad. It's just, I was on my own. It was basically, here you go. And so I learned as I went, that kind of a thing. And it was an interesting, again, like I said, it almost killed me. And after that, I was done. I focused back on teaching, focused back on law enforcement. I did some consulting. I did some other things outside of that as well while I was doing it. And I was done, And then all of a sudden, about 3 years later or 2 years later, I've always been good at getting people elected. I've just never been good at getting myself elected. So
it's a whole different animal right there.
Yeah.
Well, we're heading up to our first break. Let's. Is it okay if you stay over and we talk to you some more about kind of move forward on your time frame? Okay.
Up to you.
We'd love to have you and talk to you more about these things and your perspective on some of the police things going on, not just with the police abuse and whatnot, or what some are considering that, but just some of the way the direction some of the police forces are going nationally. So stay tuned after the news break. I'm Ben McClintock with my co-host Tim McGaffin and our special guest Beau Babka. Please check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/defendingutah. And also check us out online at defendingutah.org. And we'll be back right after the break.
Why do we sit down when all should be standing? And why do we back down at the critical moment, like a running away from the waves of the ocean? We head for the hills with the high tide approaching, as sand slips away from the castle. When it's time to stand upright, why do we falter, like placing our freedom on the sacrificial altar? We hold tight to our fears and defend our oppressors, as we fight for their lives and become the transgressors, as pacifists transform to violent aggressors. find strange. For what can one man do alone? Is there what can one man do alone? When is the right time to stand up for freedom? Could it be when you start to feel creating children who'll inherit the pain and the debt of this nation and be slaves to the banks that cause hyperinflation, who are masters of commerce, lies, and bad legislation? Whoa, if you looked in the eyes of 1,000 young children through fences of razors, their innocence stolen as the red flag of tyranny flies in the open, is that when you finally notice? Whoa, whoa, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and they say I can't change all the things I find strange. For what can one man do alone? Is what can one man do alone? I'm only a stranger looking to find better nature in my fellow man, but they keep telling me it's a sin to be free, and that's more than I'm willing to stand. Where will you be when the order is given to censor your mind as free speech is forbidden, as martyrs for peace from the world will be driven away by the sound of a bellowing thunder and choke on the blood of a dream going under? As arrogant men tear up our Constitution, and from every direction we cry revolution, standing together and without permission, soldiers for truth in the war of attrition, the love of our country as our ammunition. Oh, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and I'm going to change all the things I find strange, for I am not one man alone. Yes, I'm only a stranger. I'm a long, long way from my home, and I'm going to change all the things I find strange, for I know that I'm not alone. Yes, I know I'm not alone. Not alone. Why do we sit down when all should be standing? And why do we back down at the critical moment, like running away from the waves of the ocean? We head for the hills.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you being here. We're here with my co-host, Timothy McGaffin, and our special guest, Beau Babka. Thanks, Beau.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Beau.
It's fun to be here. But good luck to you guys.
Thank you.
This is a great thing.
Appreciate it. Let's get to some of our business again. Want to get everybody to get liking on our Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/defendingutah. I saw Beau's is liking our page now. Appreciate that. And also, we wanted to mention that if you have a comment or a question for Beau or for any of us, go to our Facebook page and go to send us a message or post on the page. We'll be glad to read that over the air. Also, we need your support. there's a funny line on the old, was it 90s movie, the Little Rascals. People, we need your money. And to keep us on the air, we do. But we've got some simple ways that I think anybody can do. If you have a business, a product or a service that you'd like to offer and get in front of thousands of people, this is prime time driving spot. People are sitting in the car listening to the radio. And really reasonable rates. And if you sign up for a 6-month contract, just one ad a day for $5 an ad for 6 months for each of our shows, we'll give you if you do a 6-month contract, we will get you a free lifetime membership to Front Sight Weapons Training. It's a $15,000 value on their website. And also, if you don't have a business or a service to sell to anybody, but you want to help us out, go to the Defending Utah page, defendingutah.org, and donate. Every $5 donation gets an entry into the drawing for a membership to Front Sight Weapons Training, a lifetime membership, that $15,000 value again. And so if you donate $5, you get an entry into that drawing. If you donate $20, you get 4 entries into the drawing. And so somebody at random will be drawing. It won't be like, oh, look at that, my wife won. No, it's going to be a really random drawing. And it'll really help keep Defending Utah on the air and keep us going and be able to expose the enemies of liberty here in Utah, as well as promote principles of freedom. A headline on Salt Lake Tribune just came up. Oh, I clicked on Pat Begley's cartoon.
Is that the one in the court of the...
No, this was on Chaffetz. This is a new one. Oh, this is not on Salt Lake Tribune. This is on KSL. And because we've got Beau Babka on, I thought this was relevant. If it's the headline's all high-profile officer shooting cases in Salt Lake City to be made public. Salt Lake City Mayor Ralph Becker has ordered that all cases determined to be high-profile, controversial, or well-publicized that are reviewed by the Police Civilian Review Board should be open to the public. Previously, only reports involving allegations of misconduct by a Salt Lake City police officer that were substantiated by the Civilian Review Board were made available to the public. Under the mayor's new executive order, signed Friday, cases in which an officer is exonerated or a claim is determined to be unfounded can also be made public if the case is determined to be high profile. The determination will be made by the mayor's chief of staff. In a prepared statement, the mayor said the change was made to, quote, heighten the levels of both transparency and accountability, issues that I know have become even more critical to our community in the midst of important national and local discussions, end of quote. Under the new rule, the Civilian Review Board report on the fatal officer shooting of Dylan Taylor in August was released to the public. The shooting was ruled to be legally justified by the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office, and the officer was also exonerated by the Civilian Review Board. Salt Lake Police Chief Chris Burbank on Wednesday said he wasn't opposed to having those records released. Quote, it's never been my intention to protect or keep any of these things away, he said. In the interest of being open and transparent, we have decided that this is probably the best thing to do, release it, end of quote. Burbank compared the release of board's reports to the release of body camera video, which he has authorized for the past 2 shootings involving Salt Lake City officers. Video from the fatal January 8th shooting in the Avenues was released almost immediately. Quote, the video does not capture truth. It does not speak to perception. What the video does is document a factual representation of what took place. And then it's up to those individuals involved to speak what the truth is, quote, end of quote, he said. The chief compared body camera video to instant replay on some of the recent NFL playoff games. Everyone watched the same video, but not everyone interpreted what they were seeing the same way. Yet one of the biggest benefits for releasing body camera videos, he said, is that their release, quote, starts the dialogue that needs to take place about what officers actually face, end of quote. Burbank also noted that releasing video is a balancing act between being transparent and protecting someone's privacy. For example, he said, incidents recording personal moments or medical conditions might not be released. Quote, I'm not looking to create TV footage. I'm looking to represent the good work the police department does, he said. Each incident will be decided on a case-by-case basis, while knowing interest in releasing but respecting rights, end of quote. Burbank admitted that having reports released involving a shooting or another high-profile incident is something he talks to his officers about. None of them signed up to be a police officer to be on the 10 o'clock news, he said. With the release of information also comes a certain amount of public scrutiny that some officers might not be accustomed to receiving. A little bit long article, but what do you think, Beau?
I think it's great. I think Chris, I think Chief Burbank's being pretty genuine. He is the one. They are the ones that have been letting that footage go and trying to figure out. And obviously, you've got attorneys, city attorneys, and people have gone, "Oh, we want them. How much do we release? Where do we go?" But we're releasing it. I think that's, I think that's the best thing. He talks about transparency. Talks about, there's going to be video released where an officer doesn't do the right thing. I'm sure eventually. So that's the risk you take, but that's the whole idea, is to try and be. So I agree with him. I applaud them. I think, good for the mayor. Good for the mayor. Might be a political thing for the mayor, but it's definitely Burbank. That department's been letting that footage go quite a bit. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's a good thing, and hopefully, what may not get a lot of news is if an officer's doing a good job. But I think you'll see a nice. We have a pretty good media here, and I think you'll have a good relationship with law enforcement. So I think you'll see that as much, maybe not as much, but once in a while.
It says the determination if the case is high profile or not is to be made by the mayor's chief of staff.
Well, I think the chief of police has a lot to say in that one. I know the mayor's his boss, but I'm sure there'll be a review every time something's let go. I'm sure the chief of staff and the mayor or the chief will talk about it. I'm sure they will. It's not going to happen. And the city attorney and everybody like that. It's going to
be
high profile. I mean, what's high profile? Deadly force situations are going to be high profile. Riotous situations. Like do you remember the old drum circles?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a riot, but you remember the drum circle. I'm sure video. If there were video like that video would be released. To show what happened. Parties, big parties, or whatever it might be. So I think you're going to see a lot of protests.
Stuff, of course, that'll be highly covered by the news.
I could see it at General Conference.
If something happened.
I could see, cops, doing the stuff around for, the LDS Church General Conference. I could see, if something happens, I'm sure that would be something they'll consider. Anyway.
Interesting. So we've got a listener question. What would you ever consider running for an office again?
That question come from.
That came. I don't know. It was texted to me. I don't know if it was from the texter or if it was.
I would never say never. It's kind of like in my article. My attitude is I would never say never, but it's not on my radar screen. I don't know what would get me to do something like that. Maybe I just don't know.
If everywhere you went, everybody all of a sudden was just begging you to run for office, that might convince you.
Yeah, if somebody had, if
here's $1 million bucks, go run for Congress.
Yeah, that's the thing. What's tough is raising money. I mean, I got pretty good at the last one. I raised over $100,000
when you ran for sheriff.
Yeah, this last time, but
which I want to get into.
That's the hard thing, is raising money and all that kind of stuff. But I'll never say never. But with that, there a little caveat.
It's not interesting right now.
No.
And would you run as Republican, or are you in Utah County or in Salt Lake County?
I'm starting my own party. It'd be the Beau Party.
The Beau Party.
Beau Not Broken Party.
Awesome.
And Beau Not Broken. Let's give you a little selfless self-promotion. Right, nice. On Facebook, you've got a Beau Not Broken page, right?
That's right. It's all my social media stuff, and I will have a book out this year.
That's awesome.
Semi-autobiographical, mostly motivational. I kind of put myself. The whole reason behind it is that, love the Zig Ziglars, love the Stephen Coveys, love the whomever else, but many of them have never gone through life and the adversity. My whole study is in human adversity, human endurance. I mean, that's really what I like to talk to people about and help them through that. And so it's one of those things where I think I know I can become someone that people can look at and say, you know what, that guy's not perfect. He's made mistakes. He's had some successes. He's done, he's only 52, but he's not plastic. I don't have, beautiful hair. I don't have a beautiful face. I don't have all those things. But what I do have is the ability. I think what I do have throughout my life has been the ability to teach or motivate or to listen and help them motivate themselves. And so the whole Bowed Not Broken thing came from about a year ago, came to me because if you're broken, in my opinion, you're broken, you're dead. Sorry, but you're dead if you're broken. And I don't think people are broken. I think we just like a beautiful bow and arrow, you pull that bow back, what happens to it? Well, it gets even more extreme, but it doesn't break. And after the arrow goes, kind of that whole picture of image, what is that? Well, those are efforts in our life. Those are challenges in our life. But we're not broken, we're bowed. And so the play on my name is the whole idea. And I think, I know that there are three things in my life, and I think in everybody's life, we keep it simple. There's three things that apply to everything in life: challenges, love, work, all that kind of stuff. And that's faith, courage, and endurance. And with those three things in balance, I believe, that's where the motivational speaker comes out. Mm-hmm. And the material is just that: the faith, the endurance part, the courage part. The faith part is in yourself. We lose if it's not in balance. If I'm saying I'm going through something like I went through 4 or 5 years ago, the losing of myself or the losing of whatever happens in that situation, the balance of faith in myself and faith in, for me, it's a Heavenly Father, it's a God, it's Jesus Christ. Those things are important to me. But for other people, spirituality. But for other people, it might be a different, deity or whatever you want to call it, or energy, and that's fine. So, but faith in yourself and faith in something else other than yourself. The courage part is in yourself, because nothing is ever done. Remember, Winston Churchill had one of the greatest sayings about courage. He said that's the one characteristic that drives the rest of them. It really does. I mean, if you think about it, to ask a girl out, boom, yeah, I got this. To go find this job, to go talk to somebody, to pull yourself out of the trash can. It takes courage. It takes faith in yourself and courage, and in the process, and the last part, that endurance is, man, physically, if you can keep yourself in somewhat your body, if you keep yourself in somewhat good shape, and understand patience, and understand that in good time, there's a plan, you'll fall into something. If you have the patience, you'll be able to get out of a problem. Obviously, illness is another challenge that we talk about, but having that endurance in there, and sometimes life takes us, and sometimes, we're better. But those three principles, without going for a half hour, are really what Bowed Not Broken is all about. And it's positive stuff. It's not, it's not fluffy stuff, but it's real life stuff. And I work with people. It's funny because my personal training side has brought me people that want to work on that, and then the side that people psychologically or just want to talk to you, like talking to a soldier a couple days ago. He now wants to get into the physical side. And so those three concepts and the whole idea about faith obviously is the soul. The courage part is the heart, and that mind, and then the endurance part is the body. So I've tried to hit everything that I possibly can hit to help people understand it's important for me. Doesn't necessarily mean it's important for everybody else, but that's the journey I'm on, and so the journey is to be this motivationalist, if you will, to help motivate people, not for money, but for watching people succeed. I mean, I have personal training people that, I've got one gentleman that's lost 130 pounds in the last 6 months, and then I've got a rock solid, little tiny beautiful sports model, bikini model, and a athlete. But she just needs me for motivation. So does he. They can do it themselves. And so I guess I'm talking in circles now, but that's what it's all about for me. And I think I have something that I can give to people that they can help themselves. And it's simple. It's not some little, again, I don't bash the motivators. I don't motivational speakers. But I kind of put myself in the category of a combination of Matt Foley, the living down by the river kind of motivational speaker, to all the way through, maybe a combination of the Ziglers and the Tony Robbins. But I want to be right in the middle. I want to be that regular guy. I'm not too old to do it. If
anybody doesn't know who Matt Foley is, do a YouTube search, and those are some pretty funny videos.
Yeah, Matt Foley, you're not going to Jack Swamp. So anyway, that's Bowed Not Broken, and that's my the foundation will be something that'll raise money for 3 different charities, and my goal this year or next is to get on Ellen. I want to be on Ellen DeGeneres' show.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
That's what I want to do.
Start writing.
That's what I want to do. So it's a regular guy doing, helping people work themselves through life. And we all hit it somewhere, some way, shape, or form, whether it's illness, whether it's jobs, whether it's...
And it's good to have somebody with them to just keep them that encouragement and keep them in the right direction.
And it's not all fluffy, but it makes sense. It makes sense that if those 3 things are in balance, you can attack pretty much anything. You really can. So
they can find your Facebook page at Bowed Not Broken. That's BEAUD, Not Broken, all one word on Facebook.
Right.
And do you have a website?
Website is bowednotbroken.com.
Bowednotbroken.com.
BEAUDNOTBROKEN. And then I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on all those things. So
cool.
Yeah, or you can look up Beau Babka, BEAU.
Do a Google and they'll find it out.
Yeah, do a Google and you'll see all kinds of fun stuff.
You're really popular.
You'll see the good stuff.
Deseret News article that was just top of the cycle there for.
Well, yeah, they put it out on Sunday, and it didn't go off until Wednesday, and it was nice to see that happen. It had more shares.
So it took a few days for it to kind of pick up steam?
Well, what happened was when I talked to Pat Reedy, who did the article, who approached me, I didn't approach him. Same thing with Stephen Dart from the City Weekly, a few months back or a year ago. But he said, well, we're going to air it. We want it to be a Sunday feature. Well, the sheriff up in Tremont passed away that week.
Right.
And so they obviously, and for obviously the right reasons, but he didn't have much communication with the bosses. The bosses put it out on Sunday, so it ended up from Sunday to like Wednesday as on the front page of the online, but it came out front page like A1 or whatever you call it.
On the print edition.
Yeah, on the print edition on Tuesday. So it was lowering gas prices, kind of ironic, and Beau Babka. So kind of cool.
That is funny.
Kind of cool.
That's a good. Which kind of gets us into. So let's go on to. You ran for Congress, and then you switched. You felt more comfortable at that time to be Republican. Ran for sheriff. What was you were with Cottonwood Heights at that time, and what made you want to run for sheriff? The
sheriff's position for so long, and even Jim fell into it as well, was not Aaron was this way. I learned to love Aaron anyway after Aaron Kennard. But Jim, they fall in. These guys fall into these positions where they don't realize how important they are in the coordination of law enforcement and corrections. That the sheriff runs the jail as well, but they don't understand how influential they are, and if they have a personality, kind of an ego, a real big ego, and a distant personality, then they tend to alienate everybody. And so in the Valley, in Salt Lake County, and a lot of counties, metro counties, you have many police chiefs. You have many people that you're dealing with. But everybody always wants to coordinate and see how they can work things and do things better with the sheriff, because he's the only elected law enforcement official in a county, constitutional base, the whole 9 yards. So there's always been this rift with the sheriff. My goal was to bring the county together, meaning not take over, or not take places and I do the law enforcement and all that kind of stuff. It was more, what can we do together to share services? What can we do to actually sit down at the table and actually talk? The current sheriff, and even back then, doesn't even get together with his other sheriffs in the state.
Right.
He's
well, that's
non-existent.
been a little bit concerning. Is he's right now he's only the sheriff over the jails. He's the chief executive officer of a corporation right now called Unified Police, which is, I've gone through and I've talked to actually their public relations guy, and the admissions that he give, I don't know if he knows what he's admitting, but that it's all profit based, and he reports to a board of directors, and they are no longer, the cities are no longer like part of a contract. They're now part owners, and so if they were to try and get out of this deal, they would be giving up all of their equipment that they have to give to the to this private corporation, and
that's why some. Sorry to interrupt, but that's why some contract, and some are in the district,
right?
The Unified Police District. There's some that still contract, which means they just pay a fee,
right?
But then there are others that pay a huge amount of taxes towards the district, and that's why you have such a variation. Where the nexus of that occurred was when the Unified Fire Department pulled out of the county, okay, and the Municipal Services Fund, or tax base, a lot of that was taken out and given to the Unified Fire District or Department, and it left the Sheriff's Office with a very small amount of that municipal services pie. So they almost had to get into districting. They almost had to get into contracting, because to pay for law enforcement service, they no longer had tax base coming into that, enough tax base.
Right.
Remember, they protect the courts. Their protective services group is a huge group of people. So they have different entities.
The sheriff's entity, not the Unified Police.
Correct. The sheriff's office still does jail bailiff. They're constitutionally based, or by state law, they're to provide protection for the courts in their county. So anyway, so my whole thrust was to bring synergy, if you will. And I know that word's thrown out there a lot, but to bring synergy to a county that everybody's at the chiefs at the higher level, the mayors, the sheriff. This guy doesn't like the sheriff. I mean, and you're not going to like the sheriff all the time, but if you have a sheriff that's a statesman, that's a sheriff, that's somebody that's inclusive, that really kind of sees really what the community is about and sees their role in 2010.
So what happened that Sheriff Winder got out of the Sheriff's Association? Was it just because he became the CEO of this corporation, or was it?
I think I don't know if he ever felt comfortable going, because I was there at the beginning of his first administration. I don't think he was very comfortable going. I think many of the sheriffs were Republican, and many of them were conservative, which is fine. But the whole idea
wasn't what he
was.
Was.
The constitutionality of the offices, I think he played it more political. He's played it more political than they do. I think, if you look at a sheriff, you look at other sheriffs around the different, a lot of the same functions, but they have a different kind of a base, more conservative base. But I think that the whole idea of why, I don't know why. It goes to arrogance. I think my own opinion. I'm not there anymore, and I'm not going back. But arrogance, and a very liberal sense of of what's going on. Liberal-minded, and not that liberal's not okay, but
in that mindset,
sense with guns. I mean, the constitutionality of guns, and not wanting people to have their gun, have the right to bear arms, kind of thing.
So Jim Winder would be a little more anti-gun than Jim Tracy.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Jim Tracy's a sheriff. That's all I got to say. A good one. I think he's a good one. One of the better ones that ever has been. So the reason I got into it was, unfortunately, that doesn't sell votes, because people go, oh yeah, right. Well, what do you know about it?
Right.
The sheriff's office internally was in so much turmoil. They were in more turmoil this last election. When Jake Peterson ran.
Right.
Jake was a great guy, very well educated, much more management savvy than Jim Winder.
What do you think happened there? Was it just because Salt Lake is so Democrat, or?
I think so. I think it's going to be hard to find a good Republican that can.
Should good Republicans become Democrats in Salt Lake County to get elected?
No, don't do. No, I don't think so. No,
There's still a chance for Republicans to win.
I think there is. I think if somebody emerged, as a really good somebody to, and had the money behind them, the backing, and really exposed what's going on in that administration in the sheriff's office, I think you'd have. But it is difficult.
So do you think Jake didn't want to get into trouble? Didn't expose it, or why do you think he wasn't willing to expose it?
I think he tried to. I think he really tried to. There were a couple of things that he exposed, but they just didn't gain the traction that you would have thought. Jim's a very popular guy up in Salt Lake County. I mean,
why?
He's very very articulate. He's very funny. He's very comedic, if you will. He's a likable guy on the out. From when you look at him face value, but he plays the political. He knows how to do it. He really knows how to do it. And a lot of conservative folks up in Salt Lake County really like him, and really like, because of one thing or another. He's become a better sheriff. I'll give him that credit. He's become a better sheriff as far as management-wise.
Is that because he's had the competition in the elections, or?
I think so.
Or just because he felt he had to be effective?
I think so. I think a lot of people that supported him, 8 years ago, don't support him anymore at all. But like a popularity contest again, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the reason why I ran is because I really wanted to not unify in taking over their services, but unify and be this collective body that could lobby legislatures, that could, here's Salt Lake County. We're a metro. What, 1 million, 2 million? I can't remember how many. I think it's over 1 million now.
Not to collectivize and make government bigger, but
but to work together. We can only work together on some things. I know that,
right.
but really be a leader in the sense of, hey, I know your needs. These are my needs. Let's work. You can help me, not because I'm bigger, and I can help you for
right.
doing certain types of crimes and investigations, things like that.
So I want to ask you about some of the things that you wanted to expose and that Jake wanted to expose. But before I do that, I wanted to do a real quick break and encourage people that if they're in the market for a new home or to sell their home, to contact Bob Womack at Osmond Real Estate at 801-372-7094. That's 801-372-7094. Bob Womack with Osmond Real Estate. And also American Appliance. They're a really great company in southern Salt Lake County that is looking for an HVAC technician and appliance repairman in Utah County. And if you've got 2 years experience at least with working on diagnosing and repairing HVAC systems, and you've got a clean background check and a clean driving record, it's a great company to work for with great benefits, consistent weekly schedule with overtime availability, a fun work environment, and healthcare options. And the pay is $18 to $25 an hour, depending on experience, and that's starting pay. So if that's something that you feel you fit the criteria, go to AmericanAppliance.com. I'm sorry, AmericanApplianceHVAC.com, AmericanApplianceHVAC.com, or give them a call at 801-254-2566. 801-254-2566, and be sure and tell them you heard about the position from Defending Utah Radio. And if you have any questions that you'd like to talk to Beau, I'm Ben McClintock, your host for Defending Utah Radio, with Tim McGaffin and our special guest, Beau Babka. If you have any questions for us or comments, go to Defending Utah at Facebook.com. And so talking about, Beau, you've been talking about why you wanted to run for sheriff, and I'm going to just be so tangential every once in a while and ask you, you brought up how Jake wanted to expose some things that were going. What are some things that he exposed, and what are some things that maybe he wanted to but couldn't, or that you wish he had exposed in the sheriff's department? Or
the one thing that I really believe that Jim Winder does a great job of not showing how much politics are involved in what he's doing, and how he's raised money on not only sheriff's office time, but in sheriff's office facilities. He's used sheriff's office assets.
I know, Jake.
That was something that that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a big iceberg underneath the water that even back to my day, where he was, using assets, trying to raise money. His handlers, I go back to people like Jackie Pascoopsy and things like that. That they totally set up things like that to make money. Anyway,
so other people are they're using this public property to make the profit.
Yeah, and obviously it's not okay to do that. The other thing,
and then he picks and chooses. It's not like anybody can go to the sheriff's department and say, "Hey, can I use this to help my business?"
Oh, exactly. Here's a fundraiser. I'm going to do a fundraiser. I'm going to do this. Meaning, Winder will do a fundraiser and use these assets. He'll take assets in his car that like political signs and things that happened during my election. He had political signs in his sheriff's car, and he'll say, "Well, I'm a political animal," but wait a minute, it's political season, and you have to kind of differentiate yourself from something else. What
do you think of some of those like the MRAPs and some of what people are calling the militarization of your local police? What do you think about, you look at some of the SWAT teams going into schools where they look exactly like some of the guys going to Iraq? I mean, is it kind of posse comitatus? Are we bringing in, violating maybe the Sixth Amendment of having a standing army in the United States?
The philosophy that I know as an administrator prior and as a cop prior, we were using military assets. We were getting military assets under grants, things like, for, what do you call them, the armored vehicles and stuff like that, personal carriers, the weaponry, the SWAT type of
the things. Camo.
Yeah, the camo. And that's, I guess my first point would be is that we had an option to get that stuff. And there are situations where that equipment can be very useful to extract people from situations like Trolley Square. I mean, we've had Trolley Squares, we've had, KSLs, we've had, all kinds of things that have gone on. We also have everyday hostage situations, extractions, search warrants that go awry. I think the only, I would use the word paramilitary, because police are paramilitary anyway, in the sense that we're up to, we have uniforms, these are the things that we do, and I think our military has gotten more policing in some of the countries outside, like we have. But just speaking about equipment, we have the opportunity to buy, rifles in a sniper situation where you've got a hostage situation where you may have a shoot or a no shoot. We were able to get vehicles. We were able to get into radios. We were able to get all kinds of things. So if people view that as militarization, I don't know. We were just able to get it for cheaper, get equipment cheaper
for surplus than
exactly. As far as the the whole SWAT thing, and I mean that's been coming for a while.
Is it being overused, or you think it's the society needs that now?
I think it's useful in the sense that if you know that you have a very dangerous person, I think it was overused for a while. 20 years ago or 25 years ago when I started, we'd go in and we'd serve a search warrant and we wouldn't gussy up. We didn't have SWAT teams in some departments. Other departments did, or we'd use them. If we knew it was really high risk, then we'd send. But most of the time we served them and we arrested people in situations now where they use SWAT. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that society has gotten more violent. It really has gotten more violent. I know the violence goes down in the crime statistics, but as far as with police, I think it's definitely increased. My point being is that there are situations where you do not want to put your personnel without high-powered rifles, without armored type machinery or automobiles or trucks or whatever. There are places you don't want to put them. Mm-hmm. And the courts, in many cases, we went through the knock and talk type of thing, and then we went through the drug raids, the drug search warrants and things like that. If you're going into if you're going into a home or a business where there's drugs, there are guns, and there are violent people. If you're going into a situation where...
Is that depending on the drug? Maybe like some guy just high on weed, he's just a doper?
No,
as opposed to like a guy that's on
that's probably
meth.
Overused. If you've got a dealer, if you've got somebody that's high risk and they've got security cameras, dogs, I mean that's where SWAT teams to serve warrants or to go in, I think are properly used.
Right.
Because you have a fortress. But if you've got somebody,
the guy like up in Ogden was like asleep or something.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing porn and you've got a full-on, and you don't have any intel that the guy's got weapons or
right.
He's a dangerous guy, and you bring the whole SWAT team in to, take down the computer and the alleged perpetrator, I think that's a little bit too much. I would require my officers to go serve it yourself. But if you can give me intel, that's where police administration comes in. They come to you and say, this is what we got, Lieutenant, this is what we got, Sarge, or this is what we got, Chief.
So what do you think happens in those cases where like the guy's he's just a smoke, he just smokes weed, and they go, like there's an example up in Ogden where the guy, he was in the shower, and so he didn't hear the cops knocking. I don't know if you remember this story. And so they do they barge in, and he thinks somebody's breaking in his house and starts shooting.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess in that situation, if you've got a SWAT team ready to go, and he's got a gun, and I don't know the whole story.
Right.
I would think their intel would have said he's got more than just a couple joints, or whatever you want to call them, cigarettes. So that's why they gussied up and they got everything. They got the SWAT team.
So you don't think it's usually justified when they're going in full force like that?
Usually. And obviously when they do a warrant, it's predicated in the warrant how they're going to do it. Is this going to be just a regular serve or with armed officers, or is this going to be a full-on mm-hmm. SWAT team type thing where we've been there before, we know this guy, or this guy's a known felon, or you just got to... the police deal with a lot of people that are on paper. They're either on probation or parole for all kinds of types of things. And in those situations, if I'm an administrator, I want them to use a SWAT team because you never know what's going to happen. But if you're talking about, 19-year-old Billy who buys stuff, marijuana, little baggies, and you're going to go into, little Billy's house because you think if you don't have evidence or probable cause or surveillance, and you're going to knock doors down and break everything and stuff like that, yes, a little over excessive, I would think. And a lot of police departments look at how they can take somebody down outside the house. So what we hear in the news sometimes... That's
probably safer than barging in.
It is. And what we hear in the news a lot of times is, oh, it went awry. But how many thousands of warrants, search warrants, and arrest warrants are done not at a person's house, but as they're going to work or at their 7-Eleven or whatever, without a SWAT team.
Right.
So we only hear about the SWAT teams that go bad, and then we think, oh my gosh, this is a little over too much, that kind of thing.
Right.
So when I think militarization, I think equipment, because I was a guy that wrote grants and got money for equipment
Got the
and
stuff.
things like that, and that's what that's what it was used for. It wasn't used to look like we were military, but we are in a way, like I said, paramilitary. We are.
Well, I've got a question from a listener. Hopefully, I'll remember my question that I've got right now. But I wanted to get to this. He says, "Did you ever see a federal agent or report sent to any of your departments that demonized constitutionalists, like the situation in Spokane?" Or I spoke with the sheriff the police chief down in Enoch, where he went to a meeting up in Salt Lake, where they had a federal guy come in and kind of said one of your biggest threats are constitutionalists.
Yes. I mean, yes. Yeah, there were the constitutionalists, that whole thing, why people fear that, I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, I've been on talk shows. I've been on talk shows, where stations have, they're total, that's fine. But yes, they always, a lot of times, law enforcement will think, well, they're crazies. Well, no, you can't have my license. Well, can you just give me your name? No. Okay, well.
Yeah, there's no if there's not probable cause.
If you get into a situation like that, then, what did they do? Was it a speeding ticket? What was it? Just talk about the situation, diffuse the situation. But have I ever seen intel on constitutionalists? Oh, yeah. I used to get stuff all the time across my desk, but it would be
are they a real danger then, or
no, they've not. They're not. They're more vocal than anything else. The more violent are the ex-felons or the current felons, or the ones that the ones that are on some kind of drug that are all wrapped up into something
not just
else.
Not just people
issues.
that just want to be left alone.
No,
like
it's and yeah.
And would you say that that's a fair represent? Constitutionalists are basically folks that are just want to be left alone, and when they have a cop kind of maybe bug them or pull them over for not having a license or that kind of stuff, it's just like they're not really dangerous. They just want to be left alone.
No. It requires a bit of verbal judo, if you will. We used to we had classes in verbal judo. It requires a rapport. Hey, I'm just here because this is what was going on. Yeah, I realize that the Constitution says this, and I know how you believe that. I'm just trying to do my job, trying to keep people safe. I can remember as a young copper pulling over, numerous. By the time I was done, we were exchanging numbers and talking about guns and all that kind of stuff. If they were doing something criminal,
like what?
Bad, like
trying to harm somebody, not just
exactly trying to harm someone, take something, whatever it might have been. Then it's a little bit of a different story.
And then you got probable cause.
Yeah, but just because you walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, can I talk to you?" and they say no, they have the right to say no.
Or how about if feds come in and they're like, he doesn't pay his taxes. He's not really a danger to anybody. Would that be something?
No, but as a police officer in a city, what kind of jurisdiction do I have?
Right.
Over.
But if the sheriff might
taxes
over right.
Yeah, if sheriff might have some of that, and obviously gun rights and illegal immigration, and we can get into all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Like Arpaio. Arpaio's going, wait a minute, you're going to do this, and we're trying anyway.
Do you see the Unified Police Department as maybe usurping the power of the sheriff's office?
I'm sad to see the Unified Police Department because I really believe in the office of sheriff. That was another reason why I ran. After that happened, after the kind of taking the law enforcement arm out of the sheriff's office, but allowing the sheriff to be on it, and the two different uniforms. He literally wears two different uniforms. I'm looking at this going, that's what saddened me was the sheriff's office is a sheriff's office. Mm-hmm. If you're gonna district something, then district the whole thing. Okay? Right. But keep the office of sheriff in there, do corrections and law enforcement. Easier said.
Which hat is he wearing when?
Exactly. Even as employees, don't even know what the sheriff, his or her employees, it could be
because like an officer for the UPD isn't part of the sheriff's department.
No, but the correctional officer is still a part, or the protective services officer is still a part of the
even though the
office.
UPD officer might work for a guy that happens to be the sheriff, but he's not actually working for the sheriff.
Correct. So it's kind of a weird. My problem is that we're taking this office of the sheriff. It's amazing, and why couldn't we have done it like Las Vegas did it years ago, or some of these other metropolitan
where they just took
areas.
over the whole thing.
Yeah, or they found a way to keep the sheriff as an elected official. I really believe in like I said, in an elected sheriff. I really believe in that.
Because it seems like Sheriff Winter's not really an elected sheriff for the people. We elect a guy that's in charge of the jails and the courts.
Well, what would have been interesting, and I don't know because I started some of the UPD stuff way back.
Mm-hmm.
I helped him a little bit with the beginning of it, not anything. Not a whole lot. But what's interesting is what if he had lost? Okay, what if he had lost the sheriff's race?
Would he still be CEO?
Would he still be the CEO of, so he really didn't lose. He's getting two incomes. Can he go over and be the chief of the UPD and then the new sheriff is the sheriff and go, nah, I'm still the chief. It's just kind of a weird thing you think about at 2 o'clock in the morning. 4 or 5 years ago I thought about it. I was like, what would happen if he lost? Anyway.
So what was that big controversy about when you ran for office and you got in trouble? Tell us about that.
Well, that was after I ran.
Oh, it wasn't during the election?
No. It was after the election.
Okay.
I had lost the election, my third election. It was...
was it close?
No, wasn't close at all, to be honest with you. Didn't understand it. Here I was there in Kennard, and then, I don't know. Don't know what it was. Like I said, I was unelectable. This was a couple months after the election. It had to do with me having I had my own truck and I paid for my own gas and all that kind of stuff for a whole year. Okay, during that whole year of 2010, and I had put in and I was working at Cottonwood Heights. I was teaching at the colleges, but I was also campaigning. So I wanted to keep any kind of vehicle or equipment out of the Cottonwood Heights eye and make sure that there wasn't anything there. But the bottom line is there was money owed, and it was a business decision that happened earlier in the year about how they were going to take care of me. Obviously, there was some political value to having Beau Babka as the sheriff for Cottonwood Heights, because they've gone through turmoil, because they created their own police department. Their chief was a lieutenant when I was an undersheriff, so he was the chief and he was the lieutenant in the sheriff's office. So there was controversy there. They didn't like the sheriff. At least I thought they didn't. In December, 2 days, a few days before that, I had a conversation with Robbie Russo, and we had talked about, what's going to happen. I'm really, this was our plan. This was our team. Yeah, I lost. Sorry I lost, that kind of thing. But got to start thinking about, and they had already transferred me from my current position as basically an advisor, teacher, DARE instructor, all that kind of stuff, back into patrol. So here I was, and that's okay. That's fine. They were treating me a whole lot different. They had started treating me a whole lot different than what it was.
Redheaded stepchild.
Yeah, obviously I couldn't be a benefit to them, which was kind of wrong, because there were a lot of
politically speaking,
because there were a lot of entities around Utah that I had gotten calls from people even during the election. Hey, if you lose, we want you to be our police chief.
Right.
And so that was one of those things that happened. So I had this blowout, and okay, fine, go get gas. We owe you $8,000 worth of gas. Really, that's what they owed, and other things, and so.
So that was part of the agreement when they had.
Yeah, and was it in writing? No. Was it in? No, it wasn't. It was a political backdoor. I'll admit, political backdoor type of thing.
So it wasn't illegal. It was just not agreed to.
No, it was. But I had my own.
I mean, not written down.
Exactly. I had my truck. I was taking everything off of that. So what happened was, 2 days I put gas in my wife's car and my son's car, and that was it. I felt bad. I did it. A month later.
What did you feel bad if it was a part of your agreement?
Because, believe it or not, I'm kind of a moral, ethical guy. I am. And I felt like, well, you know what? I'm not going to get anywhere that way. So I'll fight them a different way. I'll just do what they want me to do for now, and we'll see what happens. But then 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, I'm put on administrative leave. I'm treated like a criminal. Instead of handling it terminally, my intent was not. Did I do it? Yes. A lot of my haters will say, well, he never fesses up. Yes, I did. But my intent was never to do that. My intent was we had a deal. Anyway, so it went criminal.
How did it go criminal if you had a deal? It seems weird that they would do that. Well, I mean, not weird, but because they're jerks, basically.
That's where we get in conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that's when we get into the.
And if you had another half hour, I'd tell you how all the dots match up between Sim Gill, Jim Winder, Robbie Russo.
Well, then we're having you on some other time.
Anyway.
Yeah,
it's an interesting story.
Yeah, there's definitely the politics behind the scenes, and when you
I
learned
didn't
about
support
your
Sim
experience.
Gill. I didn't support Sim Gill in the 2006 election because I supported Laura Miller when I was a chief, and he never was going to take that down. And Robbie Russo, years before, was never a friend of mine. He became a friend because it was politics.
So what do you think about, we got another listener question, how can we restore the office of sheriff? And he says we want the dots, but we'll get into that, sorry. How can we restore the office of sheriff as people? Most of our listeners are in Utah County, but just in general, we need to get that Salt Lake. Even though I don't live in Salt Lake County, I think that's a big issue.
I think voting for someone and understanding who you're electing, meaning asking them the hard questions. If you're a constitutionalist, you've got the greatest hard questions there is.
That's right.
Because most people that don't know what the office of sheriff is, they just go, oh yeah, he's a cop, and we'll just let him go. They know nothing about the constitutionality of the office, the state constitution, what they're supposed to do, what they're not. Know that they are more powerful and more bound by all that than the police chiefs are.
That's right.
By anybody else is. And by anybody else, for that matter,
That's right.
in any county official, the sheriff is the one. I mean, you go back 200-300 years.
The sheriff is our last defense against tyranny to stand up for the Constitution.
On there.
And that's why you got guys like Arpaio down in Arizona that go for it, man. I think it's great.
Because he understands
what the office
and he's got a constituency that supports him on it.
As well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a mix. You got to have somebody that's willing to, and a constituency that cares.
Yes.
Would you say?
Yes.
Well, our time's gone by. I wish we could. I need to have you back if you're okay with that.
I'd love to come back.
And talk about connecting those dots. But I'm Ben McClintock with Defending Utah Radio. My guest host is Timothy McGaffin, and our special guest has been Beau Babka. Thank you so much. Real quick, how can people just go to your website? Facebook.com, Beau Not Broken, and your website, BeauNotBroken.com.
That's correct.
Join us tomorrow night, 5 to 7, right here on 540 a.m.